Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about today will be a quick overview of terminal operations. At this point, you will have kind of got the big picture view of all the different phases in the stream. And so then we'll go, of course, and refine that on Wednesday. There will be no quiz on Wednesday. Next quiz will be next Wednesday. So let's talk about the terminal operations and how they work. And once again, all these operations we're going to describe here apply to both sequential and parallel streams. I will talk at length, probably next week, about the internals of streams, and you'll get to see how this stuff works under the hood. It's really cool. And as always, we use our simple search stream program to clarify the key points. So every stream finishes with a terminal operation, one and only, that yields a non-stream result. And we've been looking at some examples here, as we had before. And there are three main categories of terminal operations. One category returns no value at all. So the most obvious ones are forEach and forEach ordered. And forEach and forEach ordered only have side effects. They don't. They have to have a side effect as their only result. And we'll take a much more detailed look at this a little bit later. Here's a very simple example, which you've seen before, where we're going to take a list of Hamlet characters, filter out anybody whose name doesn't start with uppercase or lowercase h. We're going to capitalize them consistently. We're going to sort them. And then for each element that has an h that's now consistently capitalized and sorted, we will print that thing out. So that's pretty straightforward. So that's obviously having the side effect of calling println. Then there's also two types of operations that have so-called reduced results. And they're collect and reduce. And these are terminal operations that work seamlessly with both sequential and parallel streams. So they work nicely in sequential streams where you've got one thread of control, and they also work nicely in parallel streams where you have multiple threads of control. Remember, terminal operations trigger intermediate operation processing. So nothing starts to run until the terminal operation is hit. And I'll explain to you how that works later. So let's give a real quick overview of collect. We'll come back later, probably Wednesday, and talk about the other reduction operations and a little bit more about forEach and forEach ordered. But let's focus on collect first, because that's by far the most common, and that's what you use for your assignments in the next one or two assignments. You'll get a lot of experience with collect. So collect is a terminal operation that uses a collector, and we'll talk more about a collector later, that performs a reduction on the elements of its input stream and returns the results of the reduction. So as you'll see, you've got a bunch of things coming through, and then we're going to collect them into something. So I like to think of this as kind of like merging on a highway. You've got merging many lanes into one lane, kind of the way to think about it intuitively. So here's where we use it in our simple search gang operation. We're going to have collect, where we're going to collect into a list. So calling collect here triggers the intermediate operation processing. And you can see we're going to collect into a list. And we'll talk more about where collectors come from, and I'll show you how to program collectors, and you'll get a chance to do some collector stuff later, which is really cool. And the list that returns from collect will present the results in so-called encounter order. And encounter order just means the order that they came into the input to begin with. So do, re, mi, fa, and so on. That's the order that they were encountered. We'll talk more about encounter order versus other types of orders later when we talk about parallel streams. So that was a very quick overview of terminal operations. At this point, you wouldn't really know enough to use them in any detail, but on Wednesday, we will cover forEach, we will cover collect, we will cover reduce in much, much more detail. And hopefully we will have a working AV system at that point. So I apologize for that today.